Welcome back for your weekly dose of Rippin, an NRL Unfiltered podcast with me, Alex, and me mate, Spencer. In this episode, we've got our Round 1 reviews for you. We've spent a considerable amount of time on every single game from Round 1, probably about 20 minutes per game, which is probably a bit of overkill, but this is the first round of a new NRL season, so there's so much to talk about and unpack. As well, we did have a couple of audio issues for Spencer this time around at the start of this episode. It only lasts for the first 30 or 40 minutes or so out of an hour and 50-minute episode, so bear with us for that one. It's all sorted for our next couple of episodes. All right, without further ado, let's rip in.
Well. Here we are on a grim Monday afternoon in Brisbane, but I'm feeling pretty chuffed after a whole weekend of footy. Mate, it's back. It's finally back.
It's fucking back. It was so good.
We had 8 games of what I thought was pretty good footy. Biggest thing that stood out for me from the get-go was I think the rule changes definitely changed the pace of the game. You saw for most of those games this week, we'll get into them a little bit later. First halves, except for that Roosters game, pretty close, pretty neck and neck.
Unbelievably fast. I particularly noticed it in the Warriors-Titans game, and I think it had a huge impact on the result as well too, regarding the strategy from both teams about how they managed that. But yeah, massively fast pace. It was fucking awesome. And also, yeah, to your point, the first 40 minutes of each game was so evenly matched, and then I think the class from certain teams just showed.
Yeah, I think when we get into it later, we'll be able to see that the teams that have a bit more stable depth in those 14 to 17 positions definitely showed their class and then medal in those second halves. And, to be honest, there wasn't really any team that surprised me in a bad way this weekend, to be honest. I think there were a few teams that were what we thought they were. But other than that, it was, at least from an attacking standpoint, it has been shown that even though some teams, like the Cowboys, for example, won't actually go over the try line, and a couple of teams sort of struggled in that 20-metre line, every team has a host of attacking options. And I think with the way these rule changes are, with how fast-paced it isn't necessarily, taking your opportunities, not grinding teams down. It's more just if you can get a turnover inside the 20 metres and you quickly turn it into points. As we'll get into the games, there were a few teams that really benefited from some quick-fire tries, but then just couldn't get on with it. And, just the class overall just seemed to shine through.
Yeah, we had to take some positions in the off-season, right? Doing our pre-season reviews, we looked at it through some pretty narrow lenses at times, which is something that you have to do. But, looking at ins and outs or results from last year, projected results from this year, and we took some positions. But something I think you forget in that process is that these are all NRL teams and NRL players. At least I forgot this. And just watching them in real time, you go, oh shit, that's right. There are still 13 above every other class of player kind of guys playing for each team. So even teams that we almost wrote off to an extent, let's say the Tigers, the Dragons, the Eagles, they all had more fight than what I think I cared to remember, because of how we had to just say that, these are the bottom 3 or 4 teams of this year. So yeah, it was good. It's good to see those guys actually put in a good effort, at least for the first 40 minutes. But before we get into, some recaps for this round, we're going to go into the big news stories from this week. It's been a long week, particularly because something happened right on the eve of the kickoff of the 2021 NRL season, and that was, of course, Cameron Smith announcing his retirement. Yes, catch you later, mate. No, was this a selfish move or poor timing? What's the go with announcing it that then?
The GOAT does what the GOAT wants. I think you're forgetting that Sonny Bill Williams actually did retire on the day that the NRL was coming back. So let's not fucking put Cameron Smith down in the dumps right here. I just think, in all honesty, I think that he was thinking about playing. He still wanted to play on, but I just think ultimately he just couldn't get it done. I think that was simply it. I reckon that he probably wanted to go to the Titans, but I think they could only maybe offer him about $600K. And at the end of the day, coming in that late into a preseason, very, very difficult. And if anything, I I liked the timing of it because rather than having to hear for an entire off season of, Cameron Smith is retired, and just like having no other news stories to go with, they would just have this to run on, which they did anyway. It was just every day was will he play or will he, won't he? And then for him to sort of come out, have that nice little ceremony in Melbourne with his good mate Billy Slater next to him, before we could even talk about Cameron Smith and him being out of the Melbourne Storm system and everything else, we just led right on to Thursday night footy and all was forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's just it. It was a really little ceremony, wasn't it? And you're right. I guess Sonny Bill Williams did something very, very similar with almost no hubbub. Like if there was very little hubbub for Cameron Smith, there was none for SPW. So yeah, maybe it's just like two blokes that don't really like the limelight as much as they've been stars of the game. They just wanted to get away. But yeah, I thought it was really weird timing because we were subjected to the Willie or Won't He for the whole of the off season anyway. So we didn't really get to miss out on any just media hubbub. But what we did get was a bit of a distraction and kind of a bit of a fading into the oblivion. But yeah, maybe who cares? It's done now. He's going to move on with a new phase of his life.
I liked his retirement much better than I liked, say, a Darius Boyd. Because Darius Boyd retired, and he's had that press conference. I, honest to God, thought that he was retiring at that second. And then I had to know that we had him for another season. And I looked back at the grand final, and you see, last year's between Panthers and the Storm. And I think the Melbourne Storm players all kind of knew at that point that he wasn't coming back because you just see the way that they reacted to, with him after the game and how the whole sort of vibe was going into it. And also as well, that Melbourne team, they are good and they show that Thursday night. But the way that they dismantled some of those teams in the final series and how quickly they put up 26 points against the Panthers, it seemed like they were rising up to a grand finish. And it's the perfect way to go. You don't want to be Jonathan Thurston, and as great as I think Thurston is, I think he's probably my number 2 player of all time. He won the grand final, then got injured the next year. Cowboys go to the grand final down and get pumped, and then he ends up having one of the few sellouts the Gold Coast Titans have ever got at Skilled Park was Jonathan Thurston's last game, where the Cowboys beat the Titans in a game that had no finals implications, whereas Cameron Smith, where he rightfully belonged, went out on top. He wasn't really robbed of Clark Churchill because Sportsbet still paid out for it, but Lil Pappy got the medal on the night. But in terms of the greatest career that we've ever seen from an NRL player in any year, and this goes from Darren Lockyer, Jonathan Thurston, Wally Lewis, Mal Meninga, all claiming that he is the greatest of all time. Even Michael Ennis comparing him as the Australian, Queensland and Storm captain to the influence that Steve Waugh had on one of the greatest cricketing teams in Australian history. So I was a little sad when it all came and done because it did seem like there wasn't too much of a hubbub. They gave him that shitty fucking statue that looks absolutely nothing like him. But other than that, it was just pure Cameron Smith. Until you actually step back and have a look, you don't really notice what he did out. Anything sort of happened. And I think that's just the perfect way that he would have wanted his career to go out. And I think it protects his legacy now that there's no chance that he goes to a Broncos or the Titans and either gets injured and has to play out the rest of the year on the bench, or his team has a poor season and he just doesn't look the same that we knew him as.
I guess it goes to the two ways that people interpret Cameron Smith. It's either that he retired without the hubbub because he never really loved the hubbub. That's just the kind of guy he was, and as you say, he played that way. Or there's the other 50% of people that have always found him to have a bit of an arrogance around him and a bit standoffish. That's literally the division of most fans about and even some players' recollections of Cameron Smith is like that. So maybe it was something else. But yeah, he's retired a champion. Not many people get to do that. So kudos to him with his statue. Yeah, it doesn't look like him. But if you have a look at his face, facial features, he's pretty plain. And I think that's the reason why it doesn't really look like him, is because there's not really anything about him that you could be like, that's quintessential Cameron Smith, so we can use that in a statue. I saw Mal Meninga's statue on the weekend, and you can tell it's him because he's got legs the size of tree trunks and a huge fucking noggin. And the eyebrows. Whereas Cameron Smith, he's just kind of... he's your everyman, which is why there was that joke about him being the accountant in the NRL, right? Because he just looks like some bloke who does your taxes at the end of the year.
It was still a shit job, regardless of how bad he was. I don't know who the fuck Melbourne hired to get that statue done, but as the great Jeff Tooby once said, there's got to be an investigation because that's just laughable. Like the Wally Lewis statue at least looks like fucking Wally. It doesn't look like him. It just does not look like him.
And Billy Slater's doesn't look like him either. But even bigger story out of that, there's only 2 statues. And there was a big 3/big 4 at the Storm. So what do you make of that? Like, there's literally a big gap that those 2 blokes are standing in that was primed and ready for Cooper Cronk. Why didn't he get one?
He's a dog. He went to the Roosters. Beat the Storm in a grand final. Fuck him.
Yeah. And probably because of the fact that him and Cameron Smith can't be in the same room, let alone immortalised next to one another.
They'll get him one. He'll get one sooner or later. Early on in that Big 3 era, it wasn't really until Cooper Cronk took the Origin jersey from, not really from Darren Lockyer, but when Darren Lockyer left, Thurston switched to 6, Cronk came in at number 7. Like, it was, you were very much aware of definitely Billy Slater, because you can't watch a game of footy that Billy Slater isn't without him popping out on the screen. And then with Cameron Smith as well. Cooper Cronk was always just kind of the game man who was, again, like a great footy player. And he knew exactly what he was supposed to do. And like that Melbourne Storm system ran through him very well. But it wasn't until a little bit later on in his career that he started getting plaudits of. It wasn't Cameron Smith and Billy Slater. It was then Smith, Slater, and Cronk. And yeah, there's like, again, I don't like to speculate on all this bullshit infighting in the NRL because the media outlets like to do a big number on it as well. But for whatever reason, Smith and Cronk haven't seen eye to eye. It probably has something to do with the fact that Cameron Smith is such a fierce competitor that he just didn't like the fact that Cooper Cronk, because I'm pretty sure Cooper Cronk, I don't think he retired. I think he said that he was leaving at the end of the year and he was going to Sydney. And I think he came out straight away to say that he was going to the Roosters. I think he said he was moving to Sydney, and there was some speculation. Would he take the gig at Fox, because he was always working at Fox League a few nights a week, or will he play on with the Roosters? Yeah. And then he ended up playing on with the Roosters. And like that, if I'm Cameron Smith, that would piss me off. Like, if you've had a guy that you played for over a decade and he fucks off to a rival team who's very good and wins back-to-back premierships, I can see it. Like, he should get a statue sooner or later, but if he doesn't, like, you know, I don't think Cooper Cronk's going to be too worried about that. He's got 3 paychecks at the moment with the Storm, Fox League and Roosters, so he's not losing any sleep over it. And if they fucking goofed up Cameron Smith and Billy Slater statues with Cronk's snoz, they're going to fuck that thing raw.
He'll request it to be perfect. Yeah, I don't know. For most other players, though, you know, they'd say you have no right to talk about someone else's contract or decision about their playing future, because obviously careers are very short and you need to do what you need to do. So, you know, it's so weird that if that is the case, that Cameron Smith decided that it wasn't right or acceptable for Cooper Cronk to go and play at a Sydney club after everything they'd done together at the Roosters. Like, you can't just tell someone they need to retire. Like, if he wanted to keep playing for a couple more years, like, and he needed to live in Sydney, like, that's just got to be what it's got to be. I think there's more to it. It's got to be.
The GOAT does what the GOAT wants. There's a reason why he's fucking played 400 games of NRL, 50-odd tests and 40 origins. He's that fucking good. And that comes from right in here, mate. Right in here. Tackling fucking German Shepherds at the age of 8.
In Marsden. And then one other big news piece that I just want to get your opinion on. So, Jake Friend has suffered yet another concussion in the Roosters game.
That was a bad one.
A bad one. And I got to wonder, number one, is he done? And number two, like, why is this such a problem at the Roosters in particular? What do they do at the Roosters that gets these players? So we got Cordner, we got Keary, and we got Friend, who are all...
And Madison, before he left the Roosters, was bedridden for 12 weeks with migraines, couldn't see sunlight. Like, I think it's just a crazy, crazy fucking coincidence, because you saw, like, and it's more like the Jake Friends as a player. He, like, if someone could have zero regard for their body, they'd have about 10 times more regard than what Jake Friend does. He just tries to use his body as a battering ram speed bump. And that one there was just a late change of direction from the Manly forward and just front of his head just straight to fucking Jake Friends. And I mean, not luckily, but he didn't whiplash his head as bad as I've seen some other guys do. He sort of like landed on his shoulder a bit. But yeah, that's... If Boyd Cordner copped 12 weeks out for the concussions, and I know, Madison took a fair chunk off. Luke Keary had to take some time off. The Roosters, to their credit, are pretty safe when it comes to their player protection when it comes to concussions. And, this is a Roosters team that is still without Victor Radley, so it's not like they're completely devoid of talent. I know he might be a couple of weeks away, so they might have a little bit of an in-between there. But I don't think Jake Friend is going to want to quit. It'd probably have to come down to the medical advice, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Jake Friend until the middle of this season to get himself, But even then, you can't even say get himself sorted because it just seems to be something that's just, lurking around the corner almost.
Well, if there is ever going to be a time that he might pull the pin for his future and for his future's sake, it'd be right now because he just had a baby. I don't know if it was his first kid or not, but he's just had a kid. And imagine having a chat with a doctor, because they're going to give you the worst case scenario. That's what doctors do, right? Look, man, if you cop another hit or two to the head, I can't guarantee that you're not going to have that CTE or you're not going to,
He's got the CTE.
Yeah.
There's no way he's not have CTE.
So, is he going to now go back and go, you know what? I've only got another season or two in me at best. Is it worth? And he's probably getting paid anyway. Does he just tap out?
Yeah, maybe becomes a coach with the Roosters or something like that. Sure. Give him some kind of, because I know that one of the hardest things for footy players is what to do after footy, and one of the big things they've got to try to sort out as well is the money. He was fantastic for Queensland last year in the Origin series. It was well deserved after years of being in the Cameron Smith era. But yeah, it's so disappointing that he just can't stay healthy. And the thing with these concussions was with an ACL or something like that, if somebody does their ACL 3 or 4 times, you're more aware of it's pretty much just you're now X% more likely to re-injure this. There's now scar tissue, the ligament is severely damaged, there's a lot of wear and tear on it. We can't guarantee that this isn't going to stay the way it should. Whereas with head injuries, you just don't know. It could be that if he takes another bad one, it could form a blood clot in his brain, or and it's not even, it's the long-term things where in 15, 20 years he might not be able to remember things very well. He might be suffering from short-term, long-term memory loss. So it is something that, and I have full trust in the Roosters. As much as I hate them as an organisation, they do take care of their own, and I don't think the Roosters will put him out on the field unless they felt it was absolutely necessary. Not necessary. If they felt they were 100% sure through medical advice that he was fit enough to play on.
The science is still, pending on this stuff. At the end of the day, it's only so recent that this has been properly studied, and it needs to be studied over the long term, that it's probably going to be something that comes out in the next 10 to 20 years. Too late for most of the current NRL crop, right?
The only thing that we know about CTE is that we know fucking nothing. But we don't know enough, and yeah, it's even just normal hits that happen in the game, especially with limited crowds in some of these games, the crack where a front row off a kickoff runs into 3 solid dudes. There's four brains that are getting rattled there. So it's why we love the game, and it's also why we respect the fuck out of the guys that play it. But yeah, not good for Jake Friend.
All right, we've also got a very special segment today. This is the first time we're going to do this, and we might bring it back every now and again as well. So we've got the fan question of the week. Now,
Fans?
Yeah, a couple apparently, but this one comes actually via Apple Podcasts from a user, Dr. Scum, who said, "Tigers fans here, fuck you. We flogged the Eels and we flogged the Broncos by 100-18 in our last 2 games, and you put them above us in the predictions. You're a bunch of flogs. We'll be listening to more, though."
Well, thank you, Dr. Scum, for listening to more. I'm interested to see what games he's talking about. Is it just 2 games that they played against Eels and Broncos? Because I don't remember the Tigers beating the Eels by a big score at the end of the year, did they?
Well, I don't know, but this is a very interesting comment. And look, we said that we're always going to respond to this sort of stuff. So we'll say, mate, remember, these are just our opinions. At the end of the day, we acknowledge in our very first episode, we're a bunch of fucking nobodies who just like to talk about footy. So this is just our opinion, and based on the rosters that we saw, particularly for the Tigers, we didn't see you guys having a lot of success. Let's also have a look at this round where, maybe some of that came to the fore. The roster of the Tigers, unfortunately, just couldn't match up to the Raiders in that second half. But at the end of the day, mate, we really appreciate your feedback. And look, man, keep listening in because I'll be honest with you, like I at least saw more out of the Tigers than I expected to see out of them. The defense was really strong, and Luciano Leilua is a fucking weapon when he gets his game right.
Well, I don't know when they beat the Eels. I know they actually flogged us last year, 48-0, but last two games, 100-18. What year is he living in? I can't see it. I'm looking right now. Like, yous versus the Eels last year, and yous lost by 10. Oh, sorry, not the Eels, the Eagles. Around the fucking Eagles. Yous won by 2. 34-32. I'm at odds. I have no idea.
Dr. Scum, please explain.
Yeah, please, like, like and subscribe and provide feedback. But yeah, I want to know what this 100-18 nonsense is about.
Yeah, look, to be fair, we probably went pretty hard in on teams like the Tigers and maybe the Dragons. So, we just took a position. Guys, prove us fucking wrong. Hopefully your team does better than what we think. But that's the way we saw it. All right, but that does bring us into the first review of the round 1 games, and it kicked off Thursday night, Storm versus Rabbits, and like if I may say so first, Spencer, this game, and the NRL season by proxy got off to a start that really set the standard for where teams need to be at this year. On the first set, the Storm almost went the length of the field with some fucking amazing ruck play, and then in response, the Rabbits almost kicked the first 20-40 that the game's ever seen, which was only saved because of the speed of Josh Addo-Carr. So it set this standard from the get-go, and then it was just after like 3 minutes of whirlwind footy talking about the pace of the game with this new rules, that's when like the class of the Storm, at least in the first half, came to the fore with a 3rd-minute try to Cameron Munster. What did you think of the way the game started, mate?
It was surprising as a Rabbitohs tipper, if you will.
That's a fan.
Nelson Asafa-Solomona really dug in. He had a good couple opening hit-ups. A lot of offloads, actually, in that early stint. They were really keen to get that second phase footy going. And like you said, it wasn't just that, like the first 3 minutes from the Storm was fantastic, but you normally expect after that for a team like the Rabbitohs to maybe settle into the contest a little bit. And by the 20th minute, they were up 18-0. And after 30, they were up 22-0. And much like the grand final last year, the Storm just have this ability to just get out to just such a cracking start. They just punch teams in the mouth early on. Lil Pappy, if there was any suggestion that he was going to regress or he was going to struggle with an increased workload, he put those to bed. Same with Cameron Munster. Obviously, that the remaining 50 minutes of the game, they failed to score a try. It was just 2 penalty goals. But when you win the game, you're not really worried about that too much. The fact that they still have Finucane and Harry Grant to come back is very promising. But I will say that I thought Solomona and the Chiefs were excellent in their absence. And as much as I'd like to give credit to the Storm for that opening 30, and they were great, I think the Rabbitohs just weren't prepared for how the game would start. And, one prediction of this game that I did kind of get right was my prediction was when Jaira came onto the field that the tide would start to turn a little bit. And Jaira in 45 minutes got through a fuckload of work. And for a little bit there, it looked like the Rabbitohs might be able to pull it back. Like Benji was on the field. Whenever he was on the field, Cook, Reynolds, Walker, and Latrell were on the field at the same time. Latrell Mitchell just looked fucking phenomenal. Cody Walker had a couple of good plays, but didn't really get the chance to settle into the fly. And it was weird because it was such a fast game of footy. But I think the Rabbitohs not getting off to the greatest start, I think really limited their options early on. But one thing that I will take out of that game that I'm really interested to see moving forward is once Latrell has his passing game really on point and teams know that they have to account for that every time, watch his running game come into play. Because there are a few runs that he had where he made a couple of half breaks at the line, but the Storm defense really sort of swarmed into him. And just figuring out that timing of when he is getting a bunch of defenders like coming in on him nice and quickly to get that ball out to the outside and just let his outside backs go to work. And then from a defensive side of things for the Rabbitohs, their slide defense wasn't up to scratch. I didn't think the Melbourne Storm. I think it was the second try. I think the Rabbitohs had the Storm pinned in the first 4 tackles. They're inside the 20, and then the Storm just flung it out 3 passes wide and gave it to Addo-Carr, and then Addo-Carr is just off to the races. And it was just like not. And that's the thing. Like when you got Josh Addo-Carr in the wing, you always have to be wary of like what he's doing and where he is on the field. And that for me was just like made me like sort of sit up and go, oh shit, the Storm are not to be fucked with this year. Like no Cameron Smith, no Harry Grant, no Dale Finucane to start the season, and yeah, fuck, they didn't look like they missed a beat. And I wonder if this is how the Storm are going to start playing their footy, where they look to really dominate that first 20 to 30 minutes, build up a good lead, and then not turn off, but just get a little bit more conservative. Because even though the game was pretty close towards the end there, it never really looked like the Rabbitohs were going to take control. There was too many errors. The Melbourne Storm defense has always been one of the trademarks of Craig Bellamy, and and also like there's been a few games that have opened the season that have sort of like failed to live up to expectations. I thought this one was just a cracking game of footy.
Oh, they definitely cemented themselves as 2 of the teams to beat, but we already knew that. It actually, like, to start off with, the Storm looked like they were going to make the Rabbits look a bit silly. And that's always the way with a bit of off-season hype. Let's have a look at the round that just happened. Any team that got the lion's share of the off-season hype, the Rabbits, the Titans, and the Bulldogs, the expectations were set so high. So none of those teams won, but the expectations were set so high. So it's sometimes maybe one of those things where these young guys read into their own media. So maybe that had an impact. But the Storm looked like they were going to make the Rabbits look a little bit silly. But maybe it was more so the Rabbits were just really scrappy. Like there were so many errors and thrown intercepts and forward passes. Like it put them under so much pressure.
There was one egregious one was they just got a set restart. And on the second tackle, the front row tried to do a flick pass offload just straight into a Storm player on the 50-metre line. It's second tackle, you've just got a set restart. Just calm it down just a little bit.
I think that's one of the ones that I noted. But I think more than anything, Damien Cook had a bit of a shocker. Damien Cook's got a bit of work to do, and maybe that's why Benji was calling him out in pre-season training, because he was stifling their attack at times. Like he's known for obviously getting out and making those little darts, but I thought he was cramping up the attack. He was certainly throwing forward passes, which is like the cardinal sin for a hooker. So, yeah, really scrappy start from the Rabbits, and then, yeah, they had a couple of good interchanges. So, yeah, definitely couldn't fault Benji's contribution. Having that many halves on the field is a weird one. I'm going to have to, allow a few more rounds to go past before I sort of say if that's going to be a good tactic or not. And then, yeah, of course, Jai Arrow came on and did a pretty good job, fucking 17 or 18 runs or whatever he did, and at that point the game did a full 180. I didn't think the Rabbitohs were ever going to win. That was not something that I thought was going to happen, because I would say that's always been the Storm's game plan. Like you saying before that, maybe this year the Storm's going to always come out the blocks firing and then defend. That's what they've always done. They've always looked to come out of the blocks firing, rush out to like 18-0, 18-6, whatever it is, and then just defend like fuck. And that's what they did here. Yes, like I think they got a bit conservative, taking some kicks at goal that weren't really necessary, but they let the Rabbits back in the game. I thought this. Well, and that maybe was where the fatigue factor came in, because early on I had the Storm aiming up on Mitchell, so they shut him down, and normally in seasons past that would diminish his impact. So if you get in his face early, like to just wrap him up, he, sort of gets a little bit shy around the game. And I think it's sort of showing his newfound resilience in that he still came back to go on and score tries and set up tries in the latter stages of the game. So that was good. And then I think similarly, the Storm weren't putting any pressure on Cody Walker, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do to Cody Walker. The more time you give him, the more opportunity he has to size you up and think, like, am I going to hit a cutout ball, which he put on an amazing one at one point in the game, I believe, or is he going to take on the line? Whereas I think at least if you get up in his face quick, like you force him to make a split-second decision, or you fucking smash him and he gets frustrated. And there were times in this game where he did exactly that, as I predicted. He started throwing elbows in the back of Munster's head and Kafusi's head. You see it's plain as day on TV. I'm like, get that shit out of your game, man. Like, just focus on doing your best. You don't need to put that shit in the back of someone's head, particularly when you're a little guy. Like, Jared Warrior-Hargraves can probably get away with it because who's going to fucking stop him? But Cody Walker's probably going to get belted someday. And will that stop him? Probably not.
Yeah, it was a good game of footy. They, like you said, they both look primed for a deep run into the finals. What I did like is the rule changes definitely seem to favour momentum swings. So you saw the Melbourne Storm get out to a really fast start, the Rabbitohs sort of come back into the game, and then towards the end of it, there were a few tired bodies out there. And, this game wasn't too crazy for that. There are a few games later on in the weekend that certainly were. But one thing that I really did like was the lack of penalties in the game. Like, obviously, these are two pretty well-disciplined sides, and I never want to blame the refs for giving away too many penalties because at the end of the day, players just shouldn't be committing them. But there's only 5 penalties in the game total. Fair few set restarts, but the NRL, I like so far the evidence of why we should be speeding the game up a little bit because it really makes it now. There doesn't seem like there's any one time where a team is truly safe on any one play. Like, it's so fast, it's so flowy. And it was even now with the kicks into touch, you kick it into touch and then straight away to play the ball. So you don't get that 15, 20-second breather being able to just like fart ass around near the scrum. They just get right back into it. So, yeah, I really like that. And although I will say that I thought the Rabbitohs and Storm both handled it pretty well compared to probably the next game that we're going to get into. But I think from that game alone, like when we get into the end of the season, these combinations are clicking and teams have that match fitness. So these rule changes are going to make some of these some of these games at the end of the season just fucking awesome.
Yeah, I was definitely in favour of that fast pace of the game. Like, it really diminished that effect of slamming the ball into touch off the boot. Like, that's been, as I mentioned in the preseason episodes, a way to just really take the air out of what were otherwise some really fast finishes and what would have gone down as classics. So that's been taken away. One thing I did notice straight away, though, is that it means less stoppages in the game for things like taking a piss or grabbing a beer. I was watching the Storm and Rabbits, and I'm like, I really need to go, or I really wouldn't mind a beer, but I don't have any fucking time. If I leave, I could miss anything, particularly in a game of this caliber. So I didn't want to leave my seat. So, it's fucking so fast now. A couple quick things that I really liked and some that I didn't. So things I really liked was Munster and Pappenhausen were fucking on fire. The vision from both of those two great examples were the cutout ball from Munster to hit JAC over Mansour. That just extra couple kilometres of pace just fucking blazed past Mansour. And then similarly, that break in play where they made a break down the side of the Storm and then they came back in and they gave it to to Pappenhausen, and normally you'd just hands it out to the backs to score in a far corner. And he saw obviously the Rabbits cluing onto that fact. They're racing back in their line to get to that corner, and so he just steps off his right foot, looks back on the inside, and hits one of his forwards or whatever, just charging in under the post. Yeah. Like the vision for that and the thinking for that in that moment were just showing that Pappenhausen's not only going to back up the season that he had last year and finishing with a Clive Churchill medal, but also maybe even going to the next level as another playmaking option for the Storm. So that was awesome. Additionally, with Munster, he was physical in defence. I don't think I've ever seen him that good in defence. Maybe I've just never paid attention to it because he's always been talked about as a offensive weapon. But I thought he was super physical, and I love that. Particularly with no Cameron Smith making 40, 50 tackles a game. So good to see that he's doing his part as a 5'8". Not many do. Things I didn't like. I thought Reynolds, a man that we spoke about in the preseason, is having to have a huge season and playing. He's playing for a long-term contract here. I thought he got caught out a couple of times. Didn't get the impact that he needed to in attack, and then similarly in defence, let in a try or two. It was his fault, 100%.
He was so,
yeah. And arrow on for Sewer. That was weird. Get Host off. Sewer is a bigger minute player. I don't know why he was the first to come off. And finally, I don't know if you heard this one, but Vossi with the casual racism. Did you hear this shit? I'll quote it back to you. He's talking about Justin Olam. And he made a reference to, wow, blah, blah, compared to back in Fiji when he played with a Coke bottle full of grass. What? First of all, he's not from Fiji. He's Papua New Guinean. Like, you don't even know where he's from, number one. And why do we just assume that in those countries they play with a Coke bottle full of grass? Like, that's pretty racist, don't you think? Like, they play footy over there as their national sport in PNG. They love the shit. In Fiji, I think they have footy balls. Like, you don't have to play with a Coke bottle full of grass, even in these communities. Like, he just threw it in there, such a throwaway line. I was like, fuck, you can't say that. But I thought that comment, after Olam had pulled off an amazing play, I think he scored a try maybe. And I was like, that's not the comment to make after Olam plays like that.
He's just a wanker. Everything he says in commentary is just shit. If this does get him cancelled, I hope this is the fucking thing that does. Because, he's just fucking... they're all shit. All the Fox Sport commentators were just dreadful. They always are. Always have been.
I haven't heard a thing about it, though. Like, nobody seemed to give a shit. I thought it would have been a thing, like, straight away. Like, he's not from Fiji, and why do they need to be... Like, why don't they have a footy? Anyway. So the second game, the first of the Friday night footy, was the Knights and the Dogs. And for this one, the conditions were pretty bad. Like, it was right after a huge storm, and I think it was even raining pretty heavily for a large chunk of the first half. So, the ball would have been such a cake of soap. So I just don't know how much analysis of this game would be down to that effect. But look, the Bulldogs got off the mark early. Their fans would have been in hysteria, right? There was a great ball from Flanagan where he slowed the play right down, and then they gave this beautiful rainbow pass over to DWZ, and he just plants it down in the corner. So they got off to this fucking unbelievable start.
He nearly fucking killed himself on that bench, though.
Yes. He
slid 15 fucking metres. They just got this blue and red fucking park bench in the corner of the field. Who the fuck put that there?
A bloke with that little IQ wouldn't have affected him. But and then the Knights finally got some field position, and as soon as they did that, they scored the easiest try possible right through the middle. And that's, I guess, when reality came crashing back down for the Dogs. So I think at the end of the day, they seemed to run out of puff, and it started falling apart for them around the 50th minute. They put in a lot of work, and they really tried before that.
Yeah, Elliott got him kind of back into the game with another... I don't know if it was soft from the Knights or just a good effort from him, but had 2 or 3 guys on him, got the ball down anyway. So... They were scratching until that 50th minute mark, I think.
Look, it's more of the same for the Dogs, really. Like, they were always in the game last year. They are always in the game, but they're lacking that extra polish or, the kind of players they need to get dubs. And so it's kind of battle stations now because they have spent a lot of money on coaches and players, and it hasn't yielded the results. I know it's only round 1, but it doesn't get much fucking easier this week.
Yeah, I think the Knights were good. I thought they were better without Ponga there. I didn't think the Dogs necessarily played poorly. I just think, for example, Nick Kotrick was playing... He was trying hard, and he was playing, I think, maybe a little bit too... too much dry condition footy, where there were a couple of offloads that he had that he maybe should have been holding on to them, and was just trying to push that second phase play a little bit too much. But at the end of the day as well, I sort of said this a bit with the Titans, and when you have so many new guys coming into your team, and in particular with the Bulldogs, they've pretty much got a new spine in there, and it's going to take time. It's going to take them a little while to gel and to develop. And yes, the Knights were without Kalen Ponga, and they lost Kurt Mann relatively early into the game, but Connor Watson's not a bad replacement. I just think the Dogs played down to the conditions, and I think the Newcastle Knights were just able to play up. David Clemmer, there were very few runs that he had where he didn't play the ball from standing up. He would run in there in the middle, slug a few guys in, get a quick play of the ball going. Daniel Saifidi, as a prop to start with, getting a double, but to get yourself a double on your 100th game, that's just fucking fantastic. Mitch Barnett was solid, kicked some goals as well, which is always nice for any of you fantasy owners that have him out there. And I think, for good or bad, it was odd for me that Watson had the number 13 on his back. I had him in my fantasy team, and then 30 minutes before fucking kickoff, they chuck him to the bench, bring him on after the 30th minute for Kurt Mann, and then he sets Mitch Barnett up for that absolute peach of a try in the second half where he just held the line up beautifully and popped it off to him. And then that try saver at the end in the 77th minute where the game was already won. They'd already won the game. And the Bulldogs player was about half a bee's dick from the line. And Connor Watson just came through and just punched the thing right out of him. I couldn't fucking believe it. It was fantastic.
He came on and made a real difference, I think. And
Fuck, he looked in that jersey. He was looking...
I was literally about to say this. In the preseason, talking about the Knights, I said, at the end of the day, they're going to have Connor Watson playing 13, and he's just a little fella. And maybe he's still got a little frame, but fuck, he's got juicy. I can't... What's he been eating? He is he's so big. So, great stuff for him, and he came on and had a real impact. And conversely, man, I think Kurt Mann is pretty close to being done. For the one reason that he's just too injury prone. Some players are just like this. We've spoken about it in the past. All the potential in the world. I think he had one of his best seasons last year. But at the end of the day, his body isn't up to the standard that it needs to be to play NRL. It's just too injury prone.
And he's just not very good. Anybody that plays NRL is a good footy player, but any team that's going up against the Knights and they see Kurt Mann at number 6, you're feeling pretty good about yourself, I think. And obviously, they have had to go through some injuries and there might be some shuffling. So maybe, after his performance, does Connor Watson come into the number 6 jersey? They do have Kalen Ponga coming back, so maybe that might make Kurt Mann a little better when Kalen Ponga's back in there. But yeah, much to the same of Eaton had if Charlie Stain scores 3 tries every game, which is looking pretty good, mind you. I would go out on record and say that I'd eat a hat if a team with Kurt Mann in their team from here on out wins a premiership as their starting number 6. It just won't happen.
I think he's done so, man. I think, Connor Watson will come in, or as you say, Kalen Ponga comes back, and they'll just do a bit of a reshuffle, and I don't think Kurt Mann comes back in anytime soon, if ever. I think the big difference in this game for me that I noticed was the offloads. So having a look and watching the game, there was only one offload by the Bulldogs in the first 65 minutes. The Knights had 13. And it's that kind of second phase play that scores you your tries. That you can't always run around a team. That's what some teams are able to do, or of course,
what the Eels try to do in the first half.
Once you suck in a team enough with rucks, real tight, big boppers, yes, you might be able to run around them for a try or two, but for the most part, those tries through the middle that are hard-earned, another difference between being a great team and an okay team is the second phase play, and they did fucking none of it, so that was a huge difference. But the things I did like were, have you seen this little scrum play that I saw in this game, but then also in Storm Rabbits and Dragon Sharks? And I know it's not a new play, but just to describe it, it's basically where the halfback will feed the ball and he does a little wrap around the back, waiting for the lock to pick up the ball, who gives him the early service. And what it does is it creates this quick overlap, particularly with the new strategy. I think, kudos to you who actually mentioned it in the preseason series as why you still like the scrum being in the game, and that now you can put it on the 50 or the 20 or the 10. And so I noticed it in a couple of games where they do that quick little wraparound, and all of a sudden you took what was a 3-on-3 to a 4 or 5-on-3, depending on how long the lock held onto the ball. And each time, I think it yielded results. I think a try might have produced a try in maybe this game, actually. Yeah, right. So I'm loving this play, and I can't wait to see some more of it. And when we saw it in 3 out of the 8 games this weekend, the things I didn't like in this game, I thought Hoy was terrible. He looked like he was playing in slow motion. He was so slow for someone who's filling some pretty big boots there in Kalen Ponga's boots. But he was also being jammed in as playing that sort of link role by chiming in at fullback, and he was getting jammed in. And when that happens, as a good fullback or good ball player of any kind, you got to kind of go, do I quickly hit the outside man or do I go? And each time he'd just do nothing and get smashed.
The Dogs, they did a good job rushing up on him early, and then he got into that mindset of, he wasn't sure if he should pass or he should run, and he got stuck into that horrible thing that happens sometimes where he was running it when he should have been passing it, and he was trying to pass when he should have been running it. And also, some of them, it was the right idea, but again, like you talking about the conditions, it was fucking. I think it stopped raining as hard towards the end of the game, but try those the crazy in one motion catch and pass off to your outside man. It just made so much harder with a wet ball because you can't grip it properly, and then even if you do get the pass off pretty well, the guy outside of you is also got to try to deal with catching the thing. So I mean. Is it I don't think it's that big of a problem. Like, there's no fucking Newcastle papers going to be like, get Tex Hoy out of there, because they still won the game at the end of the day. Like you said, the Knights, we spoke about it in the preview last week. They have 2 New South Wales props starting for them, one current, one former. And yeah, it just showed like they just really did a good job of, once they got into the grind of the game, they look solid. Like, I'm not going to make any kind of, wild predictions on where I think the Knights are going to go, because the Knights historically start seasons off pretty well. But I will say it is promising as a Knights fan if, without Kalen Ponga in the lineup, and you're able to handily beat a team and do it while your number 6 goes down injured and there's a bit of a reshuffle. So there are definitely things to build upon from this game for the Newcastle Knights, I think.
Yeah, and one last thing for me as well was, not only did Kotrick make a few poor decisions for wet weather footy, but it was interesting that he was still kind of playing like a winger. Like, I don't know if that was something that changed mid-game or if it's even part of their strategy, but did you notice that he pretty much defended on the wing and he was at the back bringing the ball back, so like dropping back on the final tackle? And because he was defending on the wing, he was doing the same old shit that made him actually... He was doing the same old shit that pretty much cost him his position as the New South Wales Origin winger, in that he does jam in, but it almost never comes off for him. He comes in so hard, and people see it coming from a mile away, and they either just do a cutout pass or a quick little shovel on, and you just go, fuck, man, don't jam in.
I can't remember which try it was, but I remember watching the game and having to like rewind, and like he tried to fucking jam in on the guy 3 in. So the guy that he passed it might have been Hoyer, it might have been fucking Mann, I'm not sure, but pass it to a 2 on none, because Kotrick jammed in and then forced his centre to have to literally cut inside of his centre. Then his centre had to try to turn around and get behind, and there was just a massive gap there. And the thing with like wingers is that like, you want a winger to be aggressive. You don't just want them to sort of stand there and let them just stand still while someone runs over the top of them. But at the same time, like, you've got to understand when to and when not to jam, and trust yourself to get there, because if you don't, you're pretty much just giving away 4 points. And yeah, that was a great.
But the bigger problem is, he is the centre. What's he doing on the wing? Like, he went there to play centre. They paid him the big bucks to play centre, and in the first game, he's already back on the wing.
Maybe he just likes number 4.
I don't know what it is, man, but that was... to me, it seems like a poor strategy and poor roster makeup by the Dogs to be like, yeah, bro, we're going to play you at centre, but only in attack. Outside of that, you're going to defend on the wing and you're going to drop back and you're going to do kick returns, because those were some of his real strengths, right? Whereas quick kick returns and early meterage, right? But you can't play both positions. If that's what you do best, just play wing. But they've already paid him the money for a centre.
Yeah, I think it's like I'm never against a team utilising their guys in the best position. Like, I've always been a strong advocate where in certain situations it's good to have Latrell Mitchell defending in centre, because he does like get a little bit dirty, or not dirty, but he likes to get stuck into the contest and likes to put a shot on and sort of get himself involved. After Thursday night, I don't think that was an issue, but in previous seasons, it seemed that like sometimes it would take for him to belt somebody or to get belted for him to kind of flick that switch and turn on. So I don't hate the idea of Kotrick, playing different positions, but yeah, it doesn't really make sense that if you want him to be the long-term centre, and then you've also got like, it's just the thing that sort of makes it weird for me is what's happening with Josh Adokar and Corey Allen, because that just has to sort of figure itself out. And maybe it was just a thing that the coach, like Trent Barrett, said because of the wet weather conditions, we feel more confident having a guy that's almost built like a prop running the ball back for us on the wing. So I'm not sure. Or maybe because they got themselves in a bit of a hole, he was like, fuck, what can we do? Maybe let's change it up a little bit. But look, I still have both those teams tipped where I think they're going to be. I think the Dogs will look a lot better in a month or so once they... And you got to think as well, like, different coach. So not only a different spine, but a different coach. Dog awful conditions. They're still missing Luke Thompson for another 3 games. So they'll start to figure it out. And the biggest thing that you did say is that it's been in the Dogs' history to just stay in the fight. And they were still in this game up until... And even, they were still trying to score tries at the end of it. And if it wasn't for a fantastic Connor Watson try saver, they would have at least got themselves to 16 points or 18 points. So, no alarm bells ringing. Like, I think it would be more worrying if the Knights lost this one than if the Dogs did. So, yeah, we'll see next week how both these teams fare. And then, so for the next Friday night game, the game that I was dreading, and I was certainly dreading it after the first play off the kickoff, was, of course, the Broncos and the Eels at Suncorp Stadium. Heard this story before. Opening kickoff goes to the Broncos. Xavier Coates can't overrun his prop, so passes Matt Lodge the ball instead of just taking it himself, and it goes for a forward pass.
The only thing, I was at this game and I just thought to myself, the Broncos have fucking cooked season 2021 within the first 5 seconds. Like, is this seriously what they're going to serve up again?
All that went through my head at that point was, I'll get fucked. Get fucked. I was like, no, it can't happen. I was like, it can't happen again. Like, this the worst possible way we could have started the season, and we've done it. But, to our credit, or to the Eels' discredit, they just didn't capitalize on it. That the whole 40 minutes of the Parramatta Eels, and I will say this, the Eels just, like Brad Arthur said it after the game, they didn't respect the Broncos in the first half. And I don't think it's that they didn't respect the Broncos, it's just the Eels have this tendency sometime to, with all the outside riches that they have that go all the way from their edge rowers all the way out to their wingers, they like to get the ball out wide, they like to get Sio and Fergo operating a little early. They tried to do that in the first half of this game, and it was to the point where they were getting set restarts and penalties, and then on tackle 2, they were throwing the ball out over the sideline because they were pushing the tempo too quickly. So the Broncos weathered that early storm, and the first attacking chance they got a try.
Sexy one too.
Through Milford, of all people. And I was thinking,
I was about to eat my hat.
Yeah. And I was thinking, and this is the thing that sucked for me, is that every time we scored a try, like I did the screaming, the fuck you para, like getting all charged up, and then I'd sit back down again and go, they're going to fuck this. Because it's always like, as a Broncos fan now, it's just always in the back of your mind that like sooner or later they're going to turn off. And then it just almost seemed like the storm clouds were brewing, and not anything to do with Cameron Smith this time at Suncorp. Matt Lodge goes for a fuck, he loves to get on the back fence off kickoffs and just charge. The ball was played at about the 22-meter line, and he ran back from the 30, charged up, and then like hit the defense like a pillow. And I was like, oh, that was a bunch of sizzle no steak. Why is he clutching at his leg? Is it itchy? Oh no, he's done his hamstring. Comes straight off the field. Fuck. All right, now we can weather this. We can weather this. We've got 4 forwards. That'll work. And then Xavier Coates goes for his second try of the game. If you've ever seen an ostrich before, like to put their head down where it shouldn't go. And old Xavier Coates has a tendency to dive up nice and high and leave his head in a nice compromisable position. And King Gutho fucked him raw. I thought he was dead. He did it to himself though. Like it had nothing to do with Gutho really. He has this tendency. Even he did it on the first try, and yeah, the theatrics were cool on the first try. But he likes to do the rainbow dive, and maybe it's something that's coached into him, where he sees it as like a specialty of his game. Where like, yeah, I'm going to always do this kind of dive, and I'm going to get really, really good at it because it means that nobody can really like bump me over the sideline. They've got very little body that they can make contact with. But on this one, he didn't really need to do it. And then, yeah, I think I texted you. I was like, mate, this fella's half PNG, half wombat because he loves burrowing under the ground. And, like, his neck, it shouldn't have been on that angle. It did things that necks shouldn't do. And he, like, fucking good news, he's all cleared. Like, he went to the hospital for precautionary scans, but he's okay. But, yeah, it was fucking scary times. Like, I think the wetness of the Suncorp field probably helped him out a little bit because he skidded instead of like jagging his head in there a little more. And then Coates goes off, and then at that point I'm going, fuck, like we're up pretty good here, but we've now got Ben Teo playing center and we've got Herbie Farnworth on the wing. So this could get ugly. Like we've really got to make sure that we sort of turn up here. And I think was that the last try of the half, or am I forgetting one? I know they scored another try, but I can't remember what order it was in. Oh, of course, Mead scored first. That's right. Yeah. There you go. So, yeah, that was the last try of the half. And all halftime, while I'm smashing down my beers, which I thought were going to be sad beers, but these were nervous, happy beers, I was like, all right, if we can get through this first 10 minutes, we got a fucking crack here. And then Reid Marnie scores a try from just the Parramatta Eels deciding that they've just got all these big cunts that can just run through the middle, and they just didn't stop running it through the middle. And then John Asiata copped the weirdest burner injury I've ever seen, where he gets hit in the left shoulder and then goes down not being able to move his right shoulder. Found out later on in the night that he wears one of those Brent Tate neck braces at training, and he's had some dramas with nerves and stuff like that. But then losing Lodge and then Coates and then Asiata for the game, we were running with one guy on the bench. You know how many times Pangai Jr. came on and off during the game? 6 times. You know how many minutes he played during the game? 45. Because we got all of those... because we got all those interchanges. We got Xavier, we got to leave because of HI. I think we got an exemption with Asiata because they weren't sure if it was the head. And then we used an interchange for Lodge. But yeah, we had we had Pangai Jr. just coming on and off because he was the only guy who was on the bench that was left. And then it was Bullimore got thrown into the action once Asiata came off. And then we spent the last 25 minutes of the game with one guy on the bench. And look, I'm not taking anything away from the Parramatta Eels. They deserve to win that game because when the Parramatta Eels are just going forward and straight, they're a tough fucking team to beat. And they just backed themselves for the rest of that half. Like, the Broncos had a couple of opportunities. Like, Jake Turpin nearly scored that try. Like, that was super fucking close. Like, Brodie Croft just should have kicked it, then should have passed it, and then dropped it, and then kicked it, and we got away with one, and we didn't deserve it anyway. And then just hard for your halves to get anything going when we were consistently kicking from our own 30 because the Eels were just pinning us into the corners so we could only come out from one end. And then the few times we did get in a chance to put some kind of pressure in our sets, it was a kick that was either just straight to Gutho or Sivo or allowed them to get into the middle. And one thing that you saw from Thursday night's game with the Storm is so good at just pinning you in a corner. And like, it never dawned on me until my roommate fucking told me, like, you put him in the corner and they can only shoot up from one side. Like, so it's not like in the middle where you've got to worry about where your defensive line is going. If you put him in that right-hand corner, everybody from the left side of the defensive line can just charge up and just hit him. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's so right. And that's what the Eels were doing to the Broncos. Well, the Broncos weren't doing to the Eels. And then the try to Paulo at the end was just, just what they were always going to win, but that just sealed the result. And, it's same old story for the Broncos, really. Like, even with the interchanges and everything else, we lose steam in the second half. We lose a bit of focus. And, as was a theme throughout most of the weekend, most teams were in the contest for the first 40 minutes, but then it was that second 40 that really mattered. And the Eels just blew us off the park in that last 40 minutes. It was, as a Broncos fan, it sucked, but like as a footy fan, like it's fun to see a team like the Parramatta Eels just going at it.
Man, I'm the most critical of the Broncos at times. They've just never been my team. And so when they don't perform to the lofty standards that they hold themselves to, I'm the first to say, not good enough. I thought they were really unlucky to lose this game. I don't think the Eels deserve to win this game. The Eels are diabolical for at least the majority of the game. The first 40 minutes, absolutely, and then certainly still periods of the second half. They had a couple of stars that I don't think lived up to expectations. Dillbags had probably his worst game of NRL I've ever seen him play, and he's normally like the guy that's supposed to carry the load that Mitchell Moses shirks every single game. So I thought they were diabolical, and I thought the Broncos were very unlucky to not get this win. Just a couple of line balls and 50-50 calls because, that Turpin one was super close. It probably should never have gotten to that point because, Croft just couldn't decide what he wanted to do and then just flat out dropped it.
And even Milford should have passed it to his left earlier. He cut back in on the right around the 40-metre line and he had David Mead on his left. And I'm not saying Mead would have scored, but that... and that's it, right? Like, when you try to roll the dice at the table and then one of the dice keeps on falling off and you get it, they just got so many cracks and so many bites out of it and they just couldn't fucking put it together. I will say, though, one thing that is interesting with Dillbags that I didn't know until, heading into the game is Lane Madison and Moses and Dylan Brown have all switched edges. Apparently, Brad Art said in the off-season that all the players said that they preferred to play on opposite sides. So now, I don't remember, I think if Lane was, obviously, I'm pretty sure Lane was on the left last year and he was playing on the right this year. And apparently the players wanted that. But you could sort of see a little bit, particularly in that first half, that there was a little bit of, disjointedness, I guess. They were maybe struggling a little bit to get the wheels churning a bit. So, and it was weird in the post-game, they were talking about it. And, they were saying like if it's not broke, don't fix it. But apparently that is what those 4 players wanted, is to get switched around. So yeah, like maybe that first 40 minutes for the Eels, that was a little bit of teething pains, and the second half of the game is like more of, and that's what I expect to see from the Eels moving forward. But yeah, they definitely left a lot to be desired, because, you know, I don't pretend for a second that the Broncos are going to be looking that good every single week. So I wonder, you know, in 5 weeks' time, how we're going to look at the Eels, you know, just beating the Broncos.
That just makes so much more sense there, man, because, you know, this was the team that had the least roster changes, at least to their starting 13, and it was so disjointed. I was just like, what have they done? So, yeah, if they've just changed some of their best players in key positions, sides of the field, that's huge. It's you know, like even like how I talk about Jack White is that he still can only play to the left, and like imagine if he's like today he said to him, mate, you can play on the right? Fucking... it would just be, he'd look like the Jack Whiten from 2013, you know what I mean? So that makes a lot more sense now. I just don't know why you do it. Like, if you're the coach and they go, oh, mate, I really want to play on the other side, you go, shut up. Yeah. Like, you play on that side because you're better.
Because there was even a play in the first half where Sean Lane, like, it looks like he should have been running, like, a slightly, like, more slanted line towards the post, but he was running it too far to the sideline, and they just ran out of room. They had to sort of like kill the play off and play the ball. And then at halftime, they were talking about it, and they were saying like they were joking about it on the Fox panel, and they were like, "Oh, like is this just like Lane like getting mixed up from being on the opposite sides and like always thinking that when he's running an out, he has to run to the left rather than running to the right because he's on the opposite side?" I just thought that was.
Yeah, and that's the kind of shit that you miss. Like, I wasn't watching it at home. I was at the game, and for example, I didn't know that these players had all gone off injured. So it only came out after the game, and I was like, oh, so like really, the Broncos are up against it, and they still, up until the final minute, were right there in it. And it took a fucking class kick from Moses, which again is all he's fucking good for. It took a class kick for him to sink him. So.
But you could see that last 10 minutes, the fucking Broncos, like they were hanging on by a fucking thread. And anytime Papali'i touched the ball, it was like if he grabbed the ball at the 15-meter line, like in that second half, just every time, man, he was dragging 3 Broncos 10, 15 meters. And you spoke about the offloads in the early Friday night game. The one thing that the Broncos have to clean up moving forward is they weren't a good defensive side last year. They were okay on Friday night in spurts, but as soon as there is any second phase footy, I don't know what it is. It's just like the Broncos just turn off. Like it's like there's some kind of switch in them where like if they're not looking directly at the play, they just turn off. Because that try that Gutho got, where they got those 2 quickfire ones back to back, that came from the Broncos all stopping and looking around for the referee to call the play dead, and then Fergo and Gutho just taking the onus on them and just getting on with it. Like they just like that. Like it's all well and good to like, you know, to whack a guy, get him on the ground, play the ball. What happens when you start to get a little bit tired and that offload comes out? Like the amount of times that Marnie would just get this late offload and then he would just right through the middle and just fucking cut us to shred.
Well, yeah, I'll also talk about the opposite side of that in the next game as well. But just quickly on this one, yeah, Papali'i was fucking phenomenal. Like I saw him in the trials, and I said, "Oh shit! Like watch out for this guy. He's gonna look good." But I could not have predicted that kind of performance in the first game in a new team. So man, watch out for him this year. I thought Marnie also, like, fucking what a game, what a trooper. Like I always find myself rooting for him because he is stuck behind Grant, which sucks. But like. He's got so much to offer as well, and he showed that in this game that he scored a meaty, set up some meaties, and tackled his fucking dick off. So like maybe he could even scrape in for a couple of years of number 14 or something, depending on how things play out. But look, this is coming from somebody who really doesn't like the Eels as well too. So you know, like me rooting for Marnie.
How about those jerseys? Ooh wee, they were shit house.
There's a couple of shit ones this year, man. I'm not loving it. And then the final one that I'll say I didn't fucking like Fergo and Sivo, they're the new rocks or diamonds. I used to say that about Edric Lee as a Raiders man. And Fergo, he did come back and produce some good plays. But Sivo, what the fuck? Some of the worst defensive reads you'll ever see from that bloke, like just standing in no man's land. Like, if he doesn't pull his finger out, I don't know if they'll re-sign him.
Well, he's got that Racing 96 rugby club fucking sniffing at his heels.
Maybe like because he's going to be commanding big dollars from the Eels this time around if he plays like that. fuck, they're not going to give it to him. So, the first Saturday game was the Warriors versus the Gold Coast. This one was played at Gosford. Fuck, that's a nice stadium, man, right there by the coastline. I always enjoy watching those games. But this one was similar to the Knights and Dogs game in that it was heavily impacted by the weather. Only this time, it was searing heat instead of pouring rain. And at first, I thought that might have been a big part of why the Titans ended up struggling. But at the end of the day, both teams had faced that same adversity, right? And the Warriors, even with their bigger forward pack, still managed to find a way to keep pushing and get the win. And the Titans, they looked so lethargic and uninterested for a team that, again, we talked about hype. They should have been there and ready to come out for 2021 firing, and they just did nothing.
Yeah, it was all the talk heading into the game was big signings and Dave Fafita, obviously one of the big ones. Tino as well. Came out that Dave Fafita had actually had some kind of infection in his ankle leading up to 2 days before the game and had been in hospital getting that treated. So he didn't play close to 80 minutes. I think he only played 60 or so, which, for Dave Fafita is normally he should be playing the 80. Obviously, like you said, the heat was a bit of a factor. But if we're talking about the new signings from that game that sort of surprised me, I think the kitty has to go to Fanua Blake, doesn't it? He was for a big boy in that type of heat, he was absolutely firing all game. And me included, I spent a little bit of time on the Warriors saying that I wasn't too sure that if 15 teams were going right in terms of getting smaller and making the game going fast, and one team was going left, you'd have to side with the 15. But at least from round one, having a few big boppers in the middle, just making some noise, maybe they have discovered some kind of, glitch in the code where if you have guys that are big enough and fit enough, then it doesn't really matter how long they can go for as long as you just, aim up in defense, as the Warriors did. And look, it was a weird game. It was probably one of those games that I was the least unsure of. Also one of the games that I didn't tip correctly. But yeah, I just think that the Warriors, for the most part, just did what they had to do. They didn't have any fucking, spectacular performances. It's just when push came to shove, particularly that last try that Cody Nikorima scored, that was just, Tavita Harris, just a really nice play to Bunty, and then just having a halfback who just got you a repeat set on the last drive, just being there to back up for your forward and just score a meaty right under the post. And I think that made it 18-0. And from that point, I think the Titans got that one try in garbage time, but they were never really a chance. And yeah, look, the Titans have got a lot of changes, a lot of new faces, and it was always going to take a little bit of time, but it just was pretty surprising how the Titans got beat, I think. And you'd think a team from the Gold Coast would be okay with the Sun as well, right?
Yeah, I guess they're all imports, aren't they? That's been the big news for the off season, but it was an arm wrestle for most of the game. And it was only in that last little period that the Warriors did pull away a bit. So similar to the fact that, yes, they scored a try in garbage time. Up until that point, what was it? Only 6-0, 12-0, something like that. So, it was close, and it was a real arm wrestle, particularly in the heat. And it had a fast pace for a lot of the game, which I think really wore down by the time the second half started wearing on. But the fact of the matter is that big Warriors pack not only out-muscled the Titans, but they outran them. The real issue that I saw was Kevin Proctor had a great game. He was hitting the line at pace, and he was hitting it and turning around looking for the offloads, and there was no one within 15 metres of him. Not even the hooker, because Mitch Rain, I thought, had a really, really good game. After we spoke about the Titans not really having a good set of hookers in the off-season, I thought he had a really, really good game. He was zippy out of dummy half, and he was making a dickload of tackles. Then they took him off, and they put on Aaron Clark, who's not good. I don't like Aaron Clark. I don't know why he's in the 17. I don't think he will be this weekend. But there was nobody, not even a dummy half, in anywhere near Kevin Proctor, who was the only one looking for offloads. So they weren't really doing the second phase play that was working for teams like the Eels and the Knights. So that killed them. And furthermore, errors killed them. holy shit, they made some errors, particularly from guys like Mo Fotuaika, who we'd just given a big rap to in the preseason and just came off an Origin berth.
Yeah, you can't give away 9 more errors to the opposition and expect to win the game. Like, one interesting piece of information that came out from this weekend from Fox League was that now, like, with the speed of the game that you're going to see, like, I was under the assumption that, it was going to be much higher scores in games and that, teams are really going to sort of, run the table, if you will. But now it's more to the point where and you saw it in the Broncos-Eels game, is that if you give teams enough chances and enough opportunities inside your own 20, sooner or later, the damn walls are going to burst. And it's now it's not so much of scoring tries as it is limiting opportunities for the other team. So yeah, you're needing to complete your sets, making sure that you don't miss too many tackles, good kicks at the end of your sets, and holding onto the ball. And you look at that Warriors-Titans game. Titans had 15 errors to the Warriors 6, and the Warriors completed 40 of 44 sets at a tune of 91% to the Titans 35 of 44. So had the same amount of sets, but the Titans failed to complete 5 more. And it's just in that sort of heat with that sort of forward pack, all it takes is you give a team an extra sniff from a dropout, or you give them. And we saw a few of them. They haven't been fucking the penalties have been going down a little bit on average. Obviously, a small sample size from this week, but the set restarts have gone up, and there've been teams that on first tackle inside their own 10 give away 2-3 set restarts in a row, and then it's just teams are doing that for a reason because they know they're about to score, and then they just can't fucking stop them. So the Titans will get better. Of course they will get better. They can't play this bad every week. But I think the biggest thing this week is the coach is probably going to be duct taping some footies to their hands and making them do fucking laps. That's what I'd be doing.
And I don't know if this factors into the incompleted sets for both teams here, but another thing that I really noticed with the errors from the Titans, so not only were they dropping ball at really critical points, so this wasn't fourth tackles, they'd already had 4 shots or something like that. This was first and second tackle, forcing offloads. But more than that, of those 4 incompleted sets that the Warriors had, I think a few of those might have been Titans caused. So they knocked down, I think, 2 or 3 intercepts, you know what I mean? So the ball goes out from a Warriors player, Titans reach a hand out and knock it down. So not only did you just cost yourself, after working for 4 tackles, giving them an extra set of 6. So set restarts, knockdown intercepts, your own errors, you've just given them all the best ball in the best parts of the...
Look, the Titans underperformed grossly. We expect them to pick it up next week. And the Warriors, small sample size, but so far so good.
That's exactly right. And I think these teams firmly do sit around the cusp of that top 8, as I said in the preseason. So particularly without how evenly matched this game was, I still stand by that. I think this was a battle of a potential 7th and 8th place finisher, and it was pretty close, and it's only round 1. I think both teams are only going to get better, and I do also still think that these are better teams than your Cowboys and your Eagles, and even Dragons Sharks. Rolling into the second Super Saturday game, we had the Sydney Roosters versus Manly. Fuck, this was a nail-biter, actually. Now, I said Roosters by 40. I was wrong. It was Roosters by 42. The Seagulls, and we said this earlier on, the Seagulls started off better than we expected.
Very well.
The back row we mentioned in the preseason was pretty good. Jason Saab also had a good start.
Kieran Foran had a cheeky little fucking pass to set up a try. That was very nice, very tidy.
They were fucking there. I think, did they score first, I think? Second.
So
it was
Tedesco got that early try.
Yeah, it was 4-0 or 6-0 or something like that. And then the Roosters got down the Manly end and made it just look easy and continued to make it look easy. And what more can really be said from there? The Manly edges simply can't match it with the star-studded backline of the Roosters, and the forwards don't really fare much better.
Yeah, I don't want to be that guy, trying to go against the Sydney Roosters and everything else, but the scoreline doesn't reflect truly how in this game Manly were. There were two things that happened in the first half. There were 2 things that happened in the big half that just completely derailed Manly's momentum. So the game was tied, and Cherry Evans had the ball. He was attacking the line on third tackle, and then whatever happened, he got spun around and he flicked the fucking thing forward, and then they gave the Roosters the ball. So that was number 1. And then number 2, the Manly Seagulls got the ball back from good defensive work, and on second tackle, 40 metres out, Cherry Evans went for the fucking kick into the in goal. And to his credit, it was a fucking fantastic kick. It was just one of those those balls are just rolled end over end over end. And honestly, Tedesco got a lick on the ball, but it wasn't enough for it to, like, it's fair, like, Cherry Evans, yeah, and it went back. But those were two things there where they were 5 meters out on third tackle, and then 40 meters out driving well on second tackle, and Cherry Evans just had, one of them was the complete, like, I can't defend the first one, him flicking the ball, that was so stupid. The second one was just Cherry Evans trying to make something happen, but the chase wasn't aware of it. They weren't able to sort of get after the ball. And then it was that thing where, like, for the Roosters, man, they're almost like a sleeping giant where, like, it does take them, like, and I think it was more as well, like, the rule changes as well. Like, the game's very fast, it's a different pace. You know, a few teams and players came out afterwards, like, we were pretty nervous in that first 20 or so minutes because we weren't sure how the game was going to go with these things. But once you poke the fucking Roosters too many times, like, you have a look at how the tries were scored. So 2nd minute Tedesco, 9th minute Garrick, nothing until the 16th, and then in the last 25 minutes of the first half, they scored 4 tries. Brett Morris and James Tedesco had a double by halftime. They both finished with a fucking hat-trick. The Roosters had 3 different goal kickers. For fuck's sake. Like, they were just fucking pinning them as, like, anywhere they could go. And like you said, that star-studded backline, like, Joseph Manu didn't score any tries, but was fucking fantastic. Brett Morris just doesn't, like, I thought, like, for sure, like obviously he's not as fast as what he used to be, but that intercept showed that he's still got a fucking, he's still got a bit of fucking gas left in the old tank. Josh Morris just simply refused to not get in on the action. And for a quiet game, credit for Daniel Tupou, like, he still stood up when he needed to. Like, Dylan Walker was looking dangerous on an edge play, and the complete anti-Kotrick, he came up and he stuck him, fucking belted him, and Dylan Walker knocked the ball on. And it was all, like, you could tell, like, in the Manly Seagulls team, like, that just deflated them so much. They're like, oh. So just everybody in that back line just performed so well. And, you know, it helps that they've got the forward pack that they've got, but this was the only game that was a complete, and I say, you know, like, the Manly, obviously you can't change players around, and Manly had opportunities to do things, but they didn't. Roosters took full advantage of that, and 46-4, and it should have been more because what's his name, the second rower, he got one in the first half. Yeah, he had one disallowed where they're like, oh, he's lost the ball, but his left hand was still on the ball as he, like, came through. So it should have been 52-4. So the Roosters very early on, obviously they were the only top 4 team. I mean, I guess the Eels. Okay, they were the top 4 team that put on a fucking licking, and they looked really, really good. And despite losing Jake Friend, their forward pack still just looks fucking monstrous. Lindsay Collins played fantastic, starting. Then you've got Jared Hargreaves coming off the bench. Taukeaho was phenomenal. Angus Crichton was dangerous as always. Got himself a meaty in the last 10 minutes. There was really just not too much you could fault from the Roosters apart from their goal kicking. They kicked 5 from 9.
Who needs to give a shit about that if you're already scoring however many tries? But yeah, I think the Eagles were really banking on at least Walker and or Cherry Evans to step up, and both of them had really bad games. Dylan Walker came out with a few bad errors, and Cherry Evans had one of the worst games I've seen him play in a little while.
He threw an offload to Lindsay Collins at the end of the game as well. Like, he was trying hard, the poor bastard, but fuck, he just had one of those games.
When those two guys obviously can't make a difference, then what chance do you have with the rest of what's a pretty young team? So it is what it is. We're down there. But a couple of things I really liked out of that game were, well, probably the only thing I really liked out of that game was that Jared Hargreaves is going to be charged and probably spend a few weeks on the sideline. Suck shit, Jared. You can't throw elbows and think you're going to get away with it. Like, he tried to claim the whole, it's a contact sport, blah, 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 and then shows replays where Curtis Sirenen has just completely dominated Jared Hargreaves in a tackle, gets up, he's got the back of his head facing Jared Hargreaves, so he just smashes him with this fucking, like, 12-6 elbow. Like, this isn't the UFC, man. Like, you're going to spend some time on the sidelines. You're a wanker. And then some other things that I didn't like. Garrick has been exposed for the last couple of seasons. He had a breakout season in 2019, and it was like, wow. And then 2020 and 2021, from the one round we've seen, really poor. Maybe there's some confidence issues there. Tapau didn't stand up now that he's, only the single member of what was the Bash Brothers. AFB had a fucking cracker of a game without him, so why couldn't he do the opposite? And then the other thing that I didn't like is Brett Morris's hairdo. that man needs some Ashley and Martin. It's fading fast.
He's still so fucking fast. Why? He's too fucking quick. He's just burning the fucking top of his hairline off, cunt. I will say though, yeah, with Tapau, like it just is so hard for like a guy of his play style to be like, to be the only one that can really sort of stand up and take that punishment, where that Roosters team, man, they'll fucking throttle you to death. And it's like you were saying, like the outside of Cherry Evans and Dylan Walker not having good games, like who do they turn to? With the Roosters, man, it's just like, it's not even like who do you have to turn to? It's just before you can do something, somebody else in that team does something to one up you. Like they're just, and it doesn't really change my opinion of either of the teams. It probably even makes me be a little bit more worried about the Roosters because of just how dangerous they can be. But yeah, man, it's like, the Roosters just don't go away. It's just so fucking frustrating. Like, finally, when you thought there might be some cracks forming, and I know again they played to some, to a lower quality team, but unlike the Eels, the Roosters didn't show Manly they showed Manly respect for the full 80 minutes, and they made sure that they went on with it. Like by halftime, that game was over, and then everything else they did after that was just dotting the I's and crossing the fucking T's. It was just a Sydney Roosters-esque performance.
Man, if you're a good player and you go to the Sydney Roosters, you're guaranteed of two things. The first is a premiership and the second is a concussion. Now, Penrith played the Cowboys in the final Super Saturday game, and this is actually very similar to our fan question of the week. We've actually got our very first giveaway here at Rippin, courtesy of the North Queensland team. Toddy Payton has called in, and he says he's got one Cohen Hess free to a good home. So, first caller in can have him, because I don't think they want him anymore, or at least they fucking shouldn't. Him and Clifford, gotta go. Gotta go. Get him out. I can't believe it. We really ripped into him in the preseason, and he's even worse than what we said.
Yeah. I think Cohen Hess has got to prove himself. Like his career since taking off has been in a bit of a downward trend. Like going up against Penrith Panthers, it's so hard to make any kind of assessment on these games because Tomalolo didn't look too great on Saturday night either. And because good teams just find out a way to minimize your strengths and to maximize your weaknesses, and making Tamalolo have to tackle the big boys as much as he did. He was already getting reduced minutes because Todd Payton said that heading into the game that he wanted to sort of use him a bit more sparingly. But then even as well, it was every time Tamalolo touched the ball, he just had fucking 3 or 4 Penrith jerseys just wrapped around him. And for better or for worse, the Cowboys do play off the back of Tamalolo, and the Penrith Panthers just aren't that team. They're built to win through 1 through to 17. If you were to tell me who played the best in the Panthers back row, I'd have a hard time picking who that was, because Isaiah Yeo played phenomenal, Kurt Capewell played fantastic, Kikau, although it wasn't a big game for him, was still solid and still used Scott Drinkwater for the fucking probably most expensive speed bump in the NRL. And then even James Fisher-Harris nearly got himself a meaty, looked dangerous all night. Fucking fun fact, fucking Fisher-Harris had more post-contact meters than any Cowboys forward had total meters. That's just stupid. That's ridiculous. And it was 24-0. And it's almost like it was only 24-0 because that first half, credit to the Cowboys. They defended a lot on their own line and they gave it a lot of dig. And I like to see dig in my footy sides, but we're going to see it throughout the year. It's just the class is going to eventually come to the top, and there's only so long. That left edge for the Penrith Panthers with Luai to Crichton to To'o, that's just fucked. That's just so hard for teams to have to fucking worry about. They only got 1 try down that side on Saturday night, but To'o ran through 3 Cowboys defenders and then just lost the ball falling over the line, so it should have been 2. And then Stephen Crichton had 2 runs where he nearly got over as well. So that edge is going to be causing a lot of teams fucking fits all year. And then to top it all off, Nathan Cleary just proved that he's the best halfback in the NRL. It's not just his game management or his organising of the forwards or his second phase footy or his fucking goal kicking. It's just he's the whole package. And whenever you have a forward that needs to be fucking put in their ass, Nathan Cleary comes through and he puts cunts on their ass. he's got a jawline that's not very nice to look at, but fuck me dead, he is a good footy player. Like, this from top to bottom, the Penrith Panthers, like, they didn't even break a sweat this game, and they beat the Cowboys 24-0. Like, dear God.
The Cowboys did really well to go with the Panthers for as long as they did, because they had some pretty good scrambled defense, and I think probably more importantly, the Panthers were a bit clunky. Passes weren't sticking. I actually thought, their big money re-signing Stephen Crichton had a lot of drop ball and a bit of poor passing, so that's why actually they didn't have as much success this time around, is because they were hitting him and he was either dropping the ball or not sticking the ball to To'o. So that was a big part of the reason why that was only a 24-0 win. It could have been so much more. You're exactly right.
18-17 was the error count in the Cowboys 18, Panthers 17, and the Panthers won 24-0. That's ludicrous. You know what I mean? That could have been a 66 drubbing.
Like, what more can be said about it? Like, when one team doesn't really score a try, like, how can you really sort of have a look at their team and go, what was good and what wasn't? I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Cowboys in this round's preview, because I think there's some real work that needs to be done there as far as their roster, and I've said that from the get-go. But one person I'll really call out for the Panthers is Luai. I don't think I've ever seen a player play as fast and still pull off the right play so consistently. Like, when he gets the ball, he's moving fucking 100 miles an hour, stepping, weaving, and then just like at full pelt, just slings this cutout ball out to a winger. He's like, how the fuck did he do that?
The one that Martin dropped towards the end there, man. I was so shocked. I didn't know what I was watching. And then he passes that ball and I was like, what? And then Martin had just made that ridiculous fucking catch and then bat down to Isaiah Yeo. And then literally, it must have just been because he was so wide open, it shocked him. He just dropped this fucking meat pipe. Yeah, Luai, man, is... He's like he twitches. He's just... There are so many good 5'8s in the NRL right now. It's and they all play in they've all got their own little brand or signature. So just from the games we've previewed so far, Luai, Michael Morgan, Cameron Munster, Cody Walker, fucking Dylan Brand wasn't great on fucking Friday night, but he has proven his class before there. And even as well, one guy that I was super fucking surprised with was Nico for the Warriors. He had
Nico Rima,
yeah, man. Him and Tavita Harris are getting a decent little fucking combo together. So yeah, at the moment, I think Luai is probably between him and Munster for 1A and 1B right now, which is crazy to think because Whiten got Dally M Player of the Year last year. But yeah, just fucking... He's phenomenal. And that Panthers team, if this is a Panthers team that has... Let me just check this one more time. 17 errors and 3 penalties conceded. And the thing is as well, they only used 6 fucking interchanges, which for the speed of the game is pretty phenomenal.
Why?
I have no idea. They just didn't fucking need to. But yeah. And 300 tackles, only 16 misses. If this is a Panthers team that's only operating at 80%, then there's going to be some dramas moving forward. And before we move on to Sunday night...
Stop banging the table, or I get in trouble for that.
Sunday Arvo footy. Did you see the Penrith Panthers training warm-up jerseys? They are the best fucking thing ever.
You like them? Yeah. I hate them.
Yeah, they look like a carton of chalky milk. I hate it. White with the brown vertical stripes with the oak in the middle. I thought they were gorgeous.
Divisive, this one. I thought it was terrible. I did not like it at all. And then also, my OCD kicking in a little bit here, how the stripes didn't line up. Yeah. I hate that. Get it away from me. Oh, fuck, man. But, yeah, some interesting ones there.
Tell you what, mate. There's nothing quite like a Sunday. You get up early, in my case late because I'm hungover. Don't eat till midday. Maybe have an egg with a hash brown. God's breakfast. And then for the first Sunday in a long time, I had footy. Footy's warm, hugging embrace. Now, I don't like Channel 9 or their commentary, so I stick to KO. And I don't normally like the teams that play on Sunday Arvos because it's never the Broncos. But a consolation is the Canberra Raiders. And they played on a Channel 9 game, mind you, free to fucking air. First time in round one, probably since fucking 94, I reckon. And they played the West Tigers, who, as Dr. Scum and maybe a few other West Tiger fans have let us know, that we're pretty hard on them. And to be honest, I'll give them this. That first 40 minutes, fuck, the Tigers gave it a red hot crack. And they gave it better than red hot crack. At halftime, I thought they were in the game. And I was thinking, oh shit, have the Raiders of old, like the ones that, play up to the opposition but also play down, like come out to play. The rest of the second half didn't really go their way. They were unlucky for a few, but overall, like we were sort of saying, the class sort of shone through. But not only are you the Raiders diehard here, you're also at the game, funnily enough. So I'll hand it over to you to give us the live bird's eye view that you had, and then I'll just come in here just to rain on your parade, really.
Yeah, what a whirlwind day it was for me, mate. I left home at 7, down in Canberra about 10. Went and had a bit of a poke around, because last time we were there, we were pretty much in and out, into GIO Stadium at 6 p.m, out of GIO Stadium at 10 p.m, back to our hotel at 1. So this was like...
Where does a man poke around in Canberra?
Well, I will say, there's not much fucking going on there.
Pokies?
I was in the CBD, and it was dead. It was so dead, and it really is a Polly's town, a politician's town. So had a bit of a look, killed some time, went to a sports bar, and then got right down to the game to watch both grades. So watched the New South Wales Cup, which the Raiders are in for the first time since like 2007 or something. And even that team was stacked. They've got Caleb Aikens.
The Raiders or the Mounties?
No, they've got rid of the Mounties. They're now with the Bulldogs, and the Raiders now have a New South Wales Cup team of their own. Yeah. So, and they were stacked too, man. Like 1 to 7, let's say, is Caleb Aikens, Semi Valamai, Harley Smith-Shields, Matt Tomoko. Number 5 was Albert Hopewade, Matt Frawley, Sam Williams. 8 was Emre Gula. There's NRL names all the way through there, right? And they put a bit of a licking on the Tigers second grade. And then we got to the first grade. And the final score was 30-12. And I don't know whether that's not quite representative of how dominant they were in some ways, because they got disallowed 2 and probably let another 2 go begging in the first half with how much pressure they had on the line and were just so clunky. So I feel like they could have hit 50, let's say. But also 30-12 was also flattering in a way, because there were a few opportunistic tries, swooped on a loose ball from Kapoa, so it was almost, okay, am I happy with this result or am I unhappy? And I think I'm happy overall, because the Raiders do typically start a bit clunky, and they certainly did that in this game. Credit to the Tigers, their defense was pretty fucking good, and they got a few players that, frankly, I didn't fully appreciate them till watching them in the flesh, which I'll go into in a little bit. But I think I'm overall happy. But in saying that, I think that I'm unhappy about the things that they needed to fix that they haven't. So the things that I'll list off the top of my head that I expected them to go better at in the off-season and clearly have not. Whiten needs to learn when to ball play and when to run. Didn't do that yesterday. Still only plays to the left. Their ability to play up to teams and playing down to teams. I don't want to see that shit anymore. There was trying to force passes and force plays that don't need to be forced. In particular, like running plays without reading what's in front of them. Someone flashes up out of the defensive line, make a decision to change the play and play what's in front of you. And they don't do that well enough. They pretty much try to run plays as if it's something they have to do, not like it's been designed to create overlaps and so on and so forth. And also the goal line attack is still so clunky. They change their entire game plan when they get down there, and they just either go completely one out and they hit the same beside the post 4 times in a row, or they play too flat before the line. So they're not trying to hit any holes. They're just... Hodgson takes a step, pass it to Williams. Williams takes 2 steps, pass it to Whiten, takes 2 steps, pass it to another guy. And it's all happening before the line, and it's not actually like challenging the defense to make a decision or, stop a player that has the power of a a Whiten. So there was a couple things there. I'm like, fuck, they haven't improved from 2020, and that's going to make me real nervous. But also, like, there were some other players that looked really, really good compared to 2020. Curtis Scott was really, really strong, I thought, particularly because, like, the Leilua brothers were, like, trying to run rampant down that side. So, like, he was really solid, and especially solid in helping out George Williams, who's already pretty fucking solid anyway. He did a great job on Luciano Leilua. Simonson had a couple of, teething issues now that he's back in after almost a year out of the game. But that offload, when he took that, like, high take and then straight to Hudson Young, was a thing of beauty. And I really hope the Raiders go to that crossfield kick a little bit more often, because they've got a real shot there. Simonson is an athlete. So, yeah, it was an all right game, but...
Yeah, it's, looking at, let's say, the Roosters Manly game versus the Raiders Tigers, the Roosters seem to be a lot more put together, first of all, in their backline, but also although they have great individual performers, a lot of the tries come down to, just good concepts and just, making the right pass and the right read. Whereas I do see with the Raiders where it is a little bit like there always has to be a little bit of, spark or brilliance to sort of get them going over. So, like, Rapina's try was Joe Tarpanay, your man, just, barreling through four guys and then getting the offload off and scoring the try. You can't bank on that every single week. Like, Ryan James's try, although fantastic that he's back in first grade and he's got a try, was soft defense. Like, Chanzi's try, while great, came off like a loose ball that he picked up on and grabbed, and then even the Simonson, like the crossfield kick, offload in. Either which way, they still won the fucking game, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. But yeah, it seems like with the Raiders that sometimes if the first or second option isn't there, they sort of struggle and they start to look around a little bit. And, maybe it is that they trust their big boys so much that when their big boys can't get over the line, and, credit where, like, credit is due, like, James Tarman got taken out of the game early because Leilua decided to dog shot his own teammate, but then came back and ended up with 49 fucking tackles, which is a solid effort. And Offa Hengawi, again, was looking like, Michael Maguire has some naysayers, like I've been one of them, about how he sort of treats his players and, or not treats his players, but the expectation that he demands. And fuck me, it looks like Offa's been doing a fair bit of cardio in the off-season, and like the team as a whole, like you can see that the class disparity in players between the Raiders and the Tigers was so evident. But man, like, I don't think there's going to be too many games this year where you're going to say that the Tigers lost that because they stopped trying. Like, they actually, he had guys like BJ, Luciano, and even James Roberts. Like, James Roberts can sometimes make the wrong play, but like when he comes in from the center position and is running back into the middle with his speed, trying to find gaps, like, you like to see that from him, because the more that he stays into the game, the more of a threat he's going to be. And that flick pass he gave up to Nofaluma at the end of the second half was fucking fantastic. But it's just... They don't have the strength and numbers there to really make particularly not against a team that we're tipping to be around the top four. Like, that Tigers team against the Broncos scares me. Like, I could see the Tigers getting a win up over the Broncos playing that sort of footy. Like, they proved, like, they definitely like converted me over a little bit. Like, I thought how they played was fucking night and day better than how I thought they were. Whether or not that was the Raiders playing down to their opposition or the Tigers playing really well, I guess time will tell. But yeah, getting back to the Raiders, at the end of the day, like, particularly with like Whiten in the post game, like, told Billy Slater, he was like, "Oh, that first half we were fucking nervous. We just wanted to figure out how these rule changes were, and then we sort of started the second half with a little bit more momentum and got things going a little bit." If you get out of week one with a win, you're 2 points ahead of 8 other teams, you know what I mean? Like, the Parramatta Eels nearly slipped up, but they still got the win, so who fucking matters, you know what I mean? Like, as long as you get that first win, and like outside of, the Rabbitohs, I would say, like, because they lost to the Storm, like, every team that won this weekend, like,
we expected to win.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
that was just because of the matchups.
Yeah,
like,
and so,
somebody had to win between the Storm and the Rabbits.
And like, at the end of the day, like, while the Raiders definitely could have looked better, like, fuck, they could have come out in that second half like they did in the first half, so at least they got 40 minutes of pretty good footy. So, just roll that onto the next week. And again, like, missing Croker, like, he's been there for a while, like that, although he hasn't been as effective as he has been in the past, like, you still got to bring new guys in that might be, a little bit like unsure of what they're doing. And also as well, like, just the speed of the game and the tempo for a team like the Canberra Raiders, who rely pretty heavily on their big guys up the middle, just getting used to it, and like, you know, you don't, maybe that, you know, Ricky was saying to them, like, don't burn out too early because, you know, I don't want you to like give me a good stint and then be fucked at the end of the game. And it kind of looked like the Raiders did that a little bit. Like the Tigers took the initiative early, like got the first try and started like, you know, getting their noses like out of there and like getting sort of a bit of work, but then fucking Raiders just rolled over and over. And you just see Josh Papali run the footy, and then three guys were on him, and he just, while standing up, just puts the ball down and plays the ball. Like, that's so demoralising for a defender.
100%. I thought that Croker's replacement, Seb Chris, was actually a lot better than I expected him to be. He's a bigger body than I thought. I didn't think he was that big or strong, but he certainly proved me wrong. Great to see Ryan James back in footy. Got a heap of minutes, got through a heap of work. A lot of people had him in their top 17 for round one. So fucking that'll mean so much for his confidence, and I can't wait to see what he brings in a couple more rounds. On top of that, Hudson Young and Joseph Tarpany are going to really like rise as the cream of the crop in back rowers, I think. Hudson Young was sensational. In saying that, the Tigers, I really like the look of Offengowie. He is looking very trim. Like, I never would have said that he was overweight, but seeing him now, I'm like, oh shit, like he could have been in such better condition. So it really shows how little effort he must have been putting in at the Broncos. And yeah, the appreciation that I now have for Luciano Leilua, seeing him in the flesh, or at least paying a lot of attention to his game that I don't typically pay to the Tigers, just not a team that I like to watch. He's a really, really strong fella. Like he's always like moving and writhing in a tackle, and he can pop out. Oh, he could pop out of tackles anytime he wants. It's just that, you know, sometimes he has an error in him. Sometimes he gets a little bit frustrated. He is a Leilua. So I think if he can get a few of those things fixed up in his game, he could really go on to become a real star there at the Tigers.
He just needs, the percentage of runs that he takes more direct at the line instead of, like, I hate when forwards do the shit where, like, rather than just run it straight, they kind of, like, have that little stutter step and then try to, like, find a gap. If he just, like, turns that percentage to, like, maybe 10% more direct runs than those, like, little probing runs, I think you'll see his game, like, go live better. Because, like, the athleticism, like, the blueprint of that player is there. It's just, like you said, like, the mental, like, get rid of the errors, be a bit smarter in how you sort of apply yourself into the attack. But yeah, man, Leilua, like, could be a fucking, like, game-breaking second rower in 5 years' time, like, to the fucking level of, like, your Crichtons and your fucking Boyd Cordner's, David Fafita's and so on. Like,
I can't believe the Dragons let him go, to be honest. I mean, like, look at their squad now. But the real reason the Tigers couldn't go on with this one is because of the ineffectiveness of their halves. We spoke about Moses Mbai. He's not a 5'8", and he certainly didn't play like one on the weekend. He just did nothing. He was more of a stop in the play than someone like actually ball playing. The ball would get to him, and it's just like a little step back in, take the tackle. And then Brooks, he tries hard. He's always trying, but he's another one similar to Milford in that I just don't think, particularly with the amount of money that's been thrown at him and the amount of responsibility and just time that's been put into him, that he hasn't grown enough. He hasn't grown enough in his interpretation of this game, the decision making especially in the moment. You know, just he so often comes up with a kick that's too long, a kick that's poorly placed. You know, on the weekend he was kicking the ball dead, or he grubbed it directly to Dunamis Louis, 2 meters in front of him. Like, you can kick the ball anywhere but the bloke directly in front of you 2 meters. And then, like, not picking the right plays as far as, the man to hit with a cutout pass or with a short ball. So, when your halves aren't doing their job, it's very difficult for the rest of your team to rise up. And we said that about many of the teams that we predict to be at the bottom of the table. If the halves aren't there, then I don't see the ability to go on with it. So, yeah, look, Raiders have got the 2 points on the ladder. They're sitting in third on for and against, and this week we get to come up against the Sharks. So I'm liking that assignment for round 2.
Yeah, and on the Sharks, obviously the final game, the final treat on our Sunday evening, outside of the KFC, of course, or the Bundy Rum Captain's Challenge. Yeah, look, a game that the scoreline probably doesn't do the Dragons enough justice. First of all, the conditions were fucking terrible. It was pissing down with rain. Besides that, it was a good game of footy. The Sharkies were exactly who I thought they were going to be. just going to fucking rough you up in the forwards, and they've got enough class in their halves right now and their outside backs to make less talented, less confident teams pay for it. And it was that little stanza where the Dragons got off to a pretty nice start in the second half. Jack Bird was, again, 50-50, I don't know, like he might have got a hand on it, but going up for a kick, there's a little bit of a bobble from the Sharks player. Jack Bird might not have got his arm to it. And then rather than Ramsey going in to score and putting them up potentially 18-14, the try gets called back. Ramsey goes off injured because he got his leg all jacked up in the tackle, and then 60 seconds later, the Sharkies have scored a try down the other end. So it goes from potentially being 18-14 to 20-12. And then from there, the Dragons just didn't have enough Malacca in the tank to get him over the line. But again, like, it's kind of the mantra of this round where, like, both these teams impressed me, to be honest. Like, I thought the Dragons played a lot better than I thought they were going to. Like, I liked the dig that they showed when Jesse Ramian, and this is a new segment alert. Every week we're going to identify what we think is the dog shot of the week, and the dog shot of the week for this week, round one, was, of course, Jesse Ramian's neck back ahead check on Matthew whatever you want to call it. He just, while the man was already being tackled and being put to the ground, just came through with a flying arm. And funnily enough for this, right, so Matt Duffy went off the field for 15 minutes for a HIA. Ramian's only off the field for 10 minutes.
Definitely a flaw in the
There's something going wrong there, right? So that was the dog shot of the week.
That must have only narrowly beat out JWH.
It was a tough, but it's the, like, like week one, we've got to get, like, people listening and viewing, and they know Jarry Hargreaves going to get dog shot of the week most weeks, so they change it up a little bit. Otherwise, they're just going to put all the money on him at the end of the season.
It was just so unnecessary. It was like third or fourth man in, and just like Blocker Roach, I think, was commentating, and he's like, "Oh, he was falling a bit." Not really.
But then he give Blocker credit though. Like, he did come back and go like, "Oh yeah, I think Ramian's in some trouble here." So when you know that Blocker Roach is like commentating and saying that your dog shot is like pretty dog, that means it's pretty dog, because he spends most games just going like, "Oh, back in my day, if you didn't throw 4 punches within the first 2 minutes, you got taken off for being too soft."
He's not a very good commentator, is he? Now, like you said, you're impressed with this game. I wasn't really that impressed.
Impressed above my expectations. Like, in terms of the game of a footy, it wasn't like the conditions. Like, again, maybe I'm looking too much into the conditions, but I thought that they played well, and it was just mainly Wade Graham. Like, I've always got a soft spot for Wade Graham. I thought he was playing pretty well. Like, when the Sharkies needed him to put in some good shots and good tackles, he was there for them. Aaron Woods was looking rather dangerous. Like, the biggest thing as well is that, like, I thought the Sharkies might suffer a bit in the middle, not having Andrew Fafita. And Paul Vaughan still had a great game of footy, but that Sharkies pack just kept on grinding away and eventually just, like, got him over the edge. And again, it is against the Dragons, so I think are going to be tipped like pretty low. So I'm not taking too much out of this, but I will say that, it's weird how certain teams have their identities. Like, like we talk about the Bulldogs staying in the fight and the Melbourne Storm just being better than everybody else. But with the Sharkies, man, there's just something about him. Like, I don't know, like when they were good, it made me hate them. But now that they've been, had a couple of like off years, it's made me like them. They're just, they just don't think that you're better than them, and they just try to belt you up. Like, even when they're getting beat, they just still try to belt you up. And I just like that. I don't know.
I've got both these teams in my bottom 8. So in my mind, this is 2 bottom 8 teams hammering it out. And even though the scoreline does say that the Sharks were 14 points better than the Dragons, that's not really quite true. As Spencer said, there was a point there where there was almost a 12-point turnaround between the Dragons scored a try, which was disallowed, and then the Sharks went the length of the field and got the try of their own. So really, this game was quite tight, which I would expect from 2 bottom 8 teams. This is supposed to be a local derby. Like, these 2 teams are supposed to fucking hate each other.
The derby.
I didn't get any feeling of that. Like, it was just 2 teams playing a game of footy. And yeah, there's a couple of alright players in both teams. I thought William Kennedy had probably one of the better games I've ever seen him play.
Yeah,
and you said that, you don't really rate him very much. So good for him to sort of show some prospect for 2021, I guess. A lot of people were giving raps to Duffy as if he played phenomenally. I don't know what game they were watching, but yeah, he made an awesome try, and I think maybe set up a try or 2 as well. But he also gave away about 2 tries with drop bombs and just poor errors and things like this. So, like, I don't see how you can, like, through a narrow lens go, oh, amazing attack, great game. But then not take into account someone's defense, which is, a big part of a fullback's job. And to that point, he went off for the HIA and Cody Ramsey filled in for those 15 minutes. And I thought Ramsey looked really good at fullback, if I'm honest. That might be the future for them because I know they're not really, quite set on Duffy yet. They're not, going into contract negotiations with him, and maybe it's because Ramsey might be their future. And I personally wouldn't mind seeing that because he just fucking carts the ball back at full tilt. Yeah. And I love seeing that. I know it's probably not done because, you're a fullback, and if you get injured with, going full pelt at sub 100 kegs, it's not very good. But he just brought it back with such gusto that I was so impressed. And he's, really good with under the high ball and probably, their star player. If you look at their 1-17, he's probably their star player. So why don't you put him in the preferred position, not winger?
Yeah, I think, Duffy's always had that in him, can, show you flashes of brilliance and then, make you scratch your head. I think, it's probably better for his career moving forward that he does move on from the Dragons, because I think that while he's not the type of player that can carry you to a finals or put his, his win value up. If you put him into the right system that has a few pieces around him already, I think he can fucking succeed and do really nicely. But yeah, overall, that last game on Sunday night is never good. They always kind of make it that way on Fox. It's normally your Friday night or your Thursday night games that are the big ticket items. So, unless you've got anything to add, I just, like you said, 2 bottom 8 teams, it's a good game of footy. I think overall, one thing from the whole weekend I'll say is that I think so far for the rule changes, I think so good. One thing that I picked up on in I think it was the Raiders-Tigers game maybe, the referee called time off in the last 5 minutes, because now the NRL rule is in the last 5 minutes of each half, they just call time off. So it used to be that the clock would run, so now if you score a try in the last 5 minutes, the clock just gets turned off. You can't milk the clock down anymore. I think that's fucking awesome, because that just gives you an extra 30 seconds of something happening, you know what I mean? And I think overall you fucking saw it in the Eels Broncos game. Yeah, the Broncos were fucked, but the Eels were pretty run ragged too. These rule changes I think are going to be a lot of fun, because I could see that maybe there's some kind of knock-on effect where teams too scared about giving up errors will make games quiet. But I think if a team is too timid and they don't try to play the ball around too much, it's just going to what happens to the Broncos so much last year is that you don't pass the ball, you do 5 1-outs, you don't even get out of your 30, and then you just get belted on the ensuing set. So I think so far these rule changes are fucking really nice, and I know that they've got some kind of clause in these rule changes where at certain points in the season they can get together with captains and some coaches and ask them how it's going. But so far I don't think anybody can be complaining about it, because outside of the Roosters Manly game that was just really good footy from the Roosters, all these games were for a majority of the game compelling and pretty close, and just that's what the NRL wants to see, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty happy with the first round of footy. Some teams have laid the foundation for the success that they're hoping to see this season, but even for the teams that didn't get the dubs in round 1, I think all of them showed the improvement that you'd want to see. So, over the next few rounds, we really get to start to piece together what's what and who's where. I can't wait to see it. And with that, that's a wrap on our round 1 review episode. We'll be back in just a couple of days with our round 2 previews. As always, don't forget to like us on Facebook or Instagram and follow us on your favorite podcasting platforms. See you soon.